benefits of us being able to join together is that teachers usually invent how to really make things work, because you guys are like out there making it work every day. And we want to capture some of the things that you've done.
And here you see my Cal State LA Canvas page. For every week, I have 2 module sections. One is the week's activities, and the other one is the homework. So I start off with this page called Overview of What to Do this week. And I had that and modified it for every week. This gives students a breakdown of when we're meeting and what homework is due each day. And I also have a table here that has the same information about when homework is due, and then also what activities I have planned for the class. So I had that at the top. I also have a section where I would put the assignment page for their Jupyter lab. What this looks like is it just has kind of generic information about the lab assignment. Now, they don't actually turn anything into this page because it's turned in through Jupyter, but this is where I would input the points, and it also has a due date. So that shows up in their like to-do list, which I figured out is really important to them. If they don't see something in their to-do list, they don't do it. And then also every week I would have a discussion board. It wasn't used that much in my class, but it was there for students to use if they had questions as they were going through the modules. So the other module for each week, I would kind of group the pages by when they were due. So I would have a very clear due date right at the top, due Monday, 8:31 at 9 a.m., and gave each one a name just to kind of clarify when like students had one of them late or something like that. They could tell me, oh, I did homework 3. Can I get the partial credit? I discovered that you can move these around however you really want to and group them into different modules.
You could also turn those little due date lines into actual assignments, and you could call it homework 3, and then that'll also show up on their calendars.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Mariela.
You're welcome.
I think that's a really important insight. I guess some students start to really rely on those due dates that pop up in Canvas.
Yeah, I had 2 different students say, it wasn't in my to-do list. I didn't do it. It wasn't in my to-do list. I didn't see it. So after that happened, I always made sure that I had the assignment due dates on all the assignments.
It's just helpful to see how people organize, because I've had that same issue.
I like the idea of actually having it in the modules so that like while they're just going through the modules, they could like be like, oh, I need to go up to the next homework.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. That was helpful. Thank you.
And even just naming it like homework 1 is nice, because I know it's like pages 2.6 to 2.9 is a super unwieldy name. It's like the worst name ever for a homework. Awesome. Thank you, Mariela.
You're welcome.
Who wants to go next?
Oh, I'll go next. So I thought of a couple things that I do. I will admit that most of the things that I've been doing, I have gotten from probably all of you. So I was trying to think of some things that I do that I didn't do. So one thing is I don't really like to cold call my students. So what I've been doing is I put them in breakout rooms and then tell them when you come out of the breakout room, like I'm going to randomly call on a room number, and then somebody from your room number will have to provide the answer or whatever your group talked about. So they go in their breakout rooms, they work, and then we come back, and then I'll just kind of go through the problems that they were supposed to work on. And I will either use R sometimes, like the sandbox, to randomly pick a group number, or
that's a good idea.
Spinner, like an online spinner. So most of the time I get an answer. Sometimes we still have to wait, but if there's 4 kids in a group, then even if they don't work together, which I know a lot of them don't, they come back, and out of the 4, usually at least one will be willing to share something. Another thing I like to do is after we do like a Jupyter notebook, maybe like the next day, I'll put a slide up that says, find my favorite mistakes. And I will gone through, and this kind of serves two purposes. One, like the students, they realize that I do look at them.
Mm-hmm.
And another purpose it serves is, we get to look at some common mistakes. And I use Pear Deck slides. So the students will just like circle where the mistake is or correct it. But, they could also just like type in the chat the mistakes that they found. All right, those are my two ideas to share.
I really love the tone that sets for what mistakes are about and debugging stuff. That's great.
Yes, which is like a higher level, right? Like debugging something is like I think what makes a coder a better coder.
I don't mind going next. I have to kind of like qualify mine because I feel like part of my biggest breakthroughs were about efficiency in getting familiar with Canvas. So I feel like some of what I'm sharing might not be remarkable to somebody that already had familiarity with Canvas, but it was things that helped me. Like managing the readings was really difficult for me. It really did make my life easier when I just started doing it bi-weekly, because then it's usually not more than 6 sections, which I can see in one window with it side by side with the grade book. And then I have the column, the week scores, and then put in, it's like 2 points per thing. So I can just count it up. And then this, I have to share because of things that happened. I honestly didn't know, you guys, that there's a Zoom button scale there, which makes me feel like an old person. But I do tell my students, like, did you know that my first year teaching, we did not have emails? Like that wasn't a thing. But then related to this, again, which you guys probably already know, but I only recently discovered that can help you make this smaller too. So you can see more sections at once. Again, I feel like, oh my goodness, it's almost embarrassing to share with you guys because I feel like you probably know, but I bet somebody will be watching this video someday that will help. And then the other thing that is related, when I was thinking about how am I going to grade the Jupyter notebooks, but in particular, like for a project, I wanted them to have feedback because it was a really big part of their grade. And I didn't know about the rubrics, but it made such a difference. I have 3 sections, so I have 90 students, and I felt like I was able to give them feedback that was worthy of the weighting of the assignment without it taking a crazy amount of time. That's mine.
Awesome. Hey, I love how varied these innovations are because it's everything from like, like managing student participation all the way to like how to grade more efficiently and see it all. Like that's really important. And they're like these little details that can make such a difference in a teacher's life. Who wants to go next?
I can go next. There are a couple of things I want to share. So first one is group roles. So I have at least 3 students in one group, and sometimes there's one group with 4. So then I just make that person the co-navigator. So I assign expectations to each role. So the driver. So before when we were in our study group, we just had driver and navigator, but I was afraid with 2 students, if both students didn't know what to do, then they would be stuck. So at least a third student might be more helpful. And if one student knew everything, they might do all the work. So I don't know, just maybe less likely to hide from doing the work. And so the driver is always sharing their screen, navigator is supposed to speak. And the advocate is the person who will share out during class. So they have to pay attention because they're doing the sharing out and they have to ask me for help. And also like have them facilitate. So I tell them like, if your group is quiet, it's your job to like ask people what to do or read the questions for your group. And then another thing was a recent thing I learned from the office hours was Deep Note. So this is a way for students to collaborate. I don't think it's good to use every time just because there are some limitations. So you can see like the recent one we did was the Happy Planet Index for the normal distribution. So like, let's see. So I have it by group numbers and I just like give them comments. So I might ask them questions and they respond to it or use it to like change the answers and things like that. So it's good because I can monitor students in real time versus like when it was in their Jupyter notebook, on Canvas. I just had to visit their breakout rooms. But I couldn't tell like where students were stuck. Like I only knew they were stuck if they called me in or if I came in and checked in with them. So the limitation is that because everyone can type in the deep note, some students can just like linger around, but because I can see their little icon, because I make them sign in, if I see a student like way at the beginning, I will come into their breakout room and say, hey, so-and-so, why are you way over there? Your group is at this section. So that does make it easy for me to monitor, but if I don't notice it, I won't see. And I also, like sometimes when I go into the breakout room, they don't know I'm there. So I can hear them say like, oh, go look at the other groups, Jupyter Notebook, don't get caught. And I'm like, don't. I was like, oh, you're allowed to spy on other groups, but don't just copy, use it for inspiration. One thing I want to try this semester is group tests because I do this in my other classes. So I thought it might be useful in this class. So basically, it's just like another Jupyter Notebook a group does, but it's just because I slap on the word test or quiz, it just makes it high stakes. So students feel like, oh, I really need to like do well. And so I tell them that everyone has to type in their own notebook. It's kind of like equivalent to every student writes on their own test paper, but they all have to agree on the answer because I will randomly select a number to grade from any of them. So in the end, each person's test will be graded, but for different numbers, but it will all count towards the same grade for everybody. So then if someone got it wrong, then everyone's going to get it wrong. And another thing that I usually include is a participation quiz. So it's just to reinforce like the group norms. So I'll see how it works remotely. I've done it in person, which is easier, but I don't know how it'll look like remotely. So I'll try to see, but it should be worth enough to send the message to students that the collaboration part is just as important as like them getting the answers.
Can you explain what a participation quiz is?
So I have a list of like expectations. So in this case, I'm just gonna use their group roles and say, okay, I'm gonna look for the facilitator reading the questions to the group and asking their groups for everyone's ideas. I'm gonna look that the driver is sharing their screen and waiting for the navigator to tell them what to type. So just like it usually could be anything. Like I can just pick certain expectations, but here I'm just gonna make it easy and just check for group roles.
Okay. Thanks.
This is really cool. I especially like this advocate idea, that third role. Do you call on those advocates?
Yeah, so after they get a chance to work in their breakout rooms on the Jupyter notebooks, we come back and share out different sections. So I'll call randomly on a group number. And so whoever's the driver in that group has to share a screen and whoever's the advocate has to speak for their group.
So it's kind of like already known, like, hey, I got to get ready. Oh, that's cool. All right. Thanks so much for sharing, guys.